Okay, brilliant. Great to see lots of you joining us here today for the very exciting book launch for the second edition of Marketing Strategy, which is amazing. Thank you so much for being here, first of all. Thank you so much to our speakers for taking the time out on this Friday afternoon. It's great to see so many people talking about the book and so many people here just interested in the second edition. Um, so this session is for us to talk about the book, but actually to have a general conversation on marketing strategy. What's changing? What do we need to be focusing on? And with the impact of AI, how do we create that marketing strategy? So for those of you joining, this is recorded. So, it's Friday afternoon. I appreciate that. So if there's something you need to dip in and out of, please don't worry, it's all recorded and the link will be shared with you afterwards. You also have the opportunity to ask any questions as well. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session, and we'll be able to answer as many questions as possible during the hour that we have together. All right, so to start with, I think it might just be useful to firstly just talk about why I wrote a second edition, because sometimes it's a bit of a challenge writing a second edition. I poured a lot of my heart and soul and endless nights into my first edition. It took me 3 years to write my first book, and the publishers came back to me a couple of years later, and they asked me to write a second edition. And at the time I said, oh, I really, I don't think enough's changed for me to add enough value. And so I held off writing this second edition. And then AI came along and that really changed things massively. And that's been the big stimulus for this book on how do we create a successful marketing strategy with tools like the AI? How do we make sure that we're optimizing for our audiences as things are changing very rapidly? And so that's a big focus of the second edition of the book. And a big emphasis also is about that clear distinction between what a strategy is versus tactics, and being really clear on the differences between the two, because I still see, some glazed faces when we start talking about strategy, and we all want to do the fun part of the tactical element in marketing. So thinking about how we can incorporate more of the planning, which doesn't have to be really long and really arduous, and how we can bring that to the forefront in our marketing approach. So you'll see on the screen, for those of you that are joining, there's lots of us jumping in and out, which is awesome. For today and tomorrow, the publishers have provided a brilliant 30% discount for today and tomorrow to celebrate the launch of the book today. So if you use the code that's on the screen and you scan the QR code, you'll get 30% off the book. You also get online resources with the book as well. So it's got templates, it's got examples, case studies, and so on, which also come with the book. So I think let's start with introducing our brilliant speakers that we have here today. If you can give a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and what excites you most about strategy. Let's start with you, Joolz, first of all, and then you can nominate the next speaker.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi, everybody. So I'm Joolz Joseph. I have about 30 years sales and marketing experience, pretty much since I left university. It evolved from working with big brands in my marketing. Today, I run I essentially operate as a freelance consultant. I'm also a senior lecturer at Hertfordshire Business School, where I teach marketing and professionalism. In terms of what excites me about strategy, I think it's actually the value it offers to businesses to shape their product and portfolio, but actually it's that kind of catalyst for growth as well. I do quite a lot of work with smaller businesses, and to see that potential that opens up once they put a proper strategy in place, I think is absolutely fascinating. So yeah, that's probably what gets me excited. And it's also helping people realise that strategy is a journey. It's not just the goal, it's the whole journey. And I'm going to nominate Jordie.
Amazing. Thank you for this nomination. I see some people thinking like, oh no, more introductions. That's terrible. I'll keep it short, which means saying that yes, I come from an email marketing CRM background and an agency background where I worked about 8 years and working for some amazing like big clients in the Netherlands. Shout out to the Netherlands. And now I'm a consultant. I help companies with their email marketing as well, just like Jules. Plus, with selecting marketing software, which is, you know, not a process that everybody enjoys. So that's where I come in, and then because I actually do enjoy helping companies to select email and CRM software. Um, the thing I love about strategy, well, first I love about marketing strategy is that you can buy books about it. So soft plug there. And second, what I love about marketing strategy is that actually you can make a change by thinking about this very hard and then choosing the path that you love. So this is actually one of the very few places where you can make a change after thinking about it. And so applying smart thinking. So that's what I would love the most. So next, and I am on to nominate. Let's do Joyann.
Thank you so much, Jordie.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Joyann Boyce. I was slash still kind of am an inclusive marketing consultant. I've advised brands around the world about how to make their strategies more inclusive, like Coca-Cola, Adobe, nationwide, about how they can really implement that inclusivity. And through that journey, I kind of stumbled into the AI space because I tried to create a software that would detect bias in marketing content. If anyone remembers, there's been a bunch of campaigns, like the H&M campaign, that was really, really biased. I think we mentioned it in the book as well, actually. And it lost H&M about $4 billion. So I tried to create a software that would detect that, but I realized AI itself was biased. So I got a data science master's, and now I advise companies on how to use AI inclusively and responsibly to have inclusive outputs. My passion, I guess, or my enjoyment around strategy and marketing strategy in particular is it just feels like a plan you can actually execute in life, which when you think about all the things we do in businesses, a lot of the times there's so much that's outside your control. And I originally started as a social media manager, so learning all aspects of marketing from content, the copy, all of it. But for me, strategy is one of those things that you're making a plan that's really trying to achieve impact, trying to change minds and influence people. And you don't get to do that whole 360 view in any other aspect of business, I feel, is my opinion. The salespeople might disagree, but that's what I think. I'm going to nominate James to introduce next.
Thanks so much, Joanne. My name's James Dales. I'm head of PR and external affairs at the Chartered Institute of Marketing. My current focus is basically focused around PR and demand generation. So I head up a lot of the media relations, our public affairs, our research reports, and a lot of thought leadership and outbound comms. So lots of time thinking about things and then trying to share as much information as I can with everybody. My background, I spent 10 years in agency, working with lots of tech brands before switching in-house, where I spent the last 10 years working with brands like Motorola and now the Chartered Institute of Marketing. What do I love about strategy? I think I love the fact is it allows you to take a step back from the craziness of marketing in the everyday life and just take a moment to go, right, where are we? Where do we want to go? And I think that's probably one of the most exciting bits of our marketing roles is that kind of where can I take this brand next and kind of as a group, where can we go next? So yeah, it's great to speak to everyone today and buy the book, it's excellent.
Amazing. So great to have you all here, and thank you so much, and you've all got so much experience to share, so I'm really excited to hear our conversation unfold here today. For those of you that have just jumped in, please do start adding your questions as we're discussing things, and anything, that you want to ask us, we'll get to at the end. Okay, James, I think you really started to touch on the first part that's probably worth us talking about to start with. And that is, what exactly is a marketing strategy? What do you think should go in it?
So for me, it's simply about defining what's important to your company, what do you want to achieve, and how you want to get there. But I always talk to my team about it's more of a North Star, not just for you, but for everybody, so that everyone has a clear direction of kind of where you're going and how that is in line with your business needs. I think that's the key thing. And just making sure you have effective measurement in place, because without a strategy and just tactics, everything can become really inconsistent, and it's really hard to then measure results, as I found out in the past. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's how I think.
Yeah, exactly that. And you use the word destination there, because I would completely say that the strategy is the roadmap to get to your destination, and the tactics, that's the vehicles of how you're going to get there. And if we just focus on how we're going to get there, but not our destination, we're just going anywhere or round in circles, maybe as well, which is what you sometimes see with organizations that they don't have the strategy, or they've focused too much of the effort on the tactical piece, and they're not really delivering anything of value. I thought it was really interesting there that you talked about the measurement in place, like how, any tips on how you do that? How do you incorporate that in your strategy?
Yeah, so I think just picking up one of your points is that I don't know about the rest of the panels, but I found that over the last sort of 10 years, I have more and more stakeholders across the business that want to a say in the direction of marketing. So I think that getting everyone involved, getting everyone bought into what you're saying at the very start is so critical. Measurement is unbelievably key. So I think you want to have clear measurements. Look at your business goals, and then look at where the business wants to be. And you're probably going to have to talk to lots and lots of different people, because you speak to the sales team, they're going to give you KPIs. You speak to other teams, are going to get a completely different view. So I normally gather them all in there and then try to get everyone sat down and agree measurement that you can then deliver against. Because if you don't get that agreed at the very start, it can be really hard then to retrofit that, as I've found out to myself over the years.
It's a great point. So if I can add to that, James, when I'm giving a training I give some trainings on email marketing, and obviously you're going to go into a lot of tactics as well, and things, like, hey, we should do this automation, or hey, we should do this or that, right? And I always give people that are attending that, I give them the clear view that, okay, if it's not working, you don't have to do it for me. You don't have to do it for me. It's still a best practice. You should do it maybe, but if it's not working, or if you don't feel like doing it, which is maybe something like a business strategy, or like we feel that we don't want, it doesn't feel good for small business owners that really don't want to use that. That's fine. Just don't do it if it doesn't work. And that's why you need to measure. Like,
Do you think there's a pressure though to do it because competitors are? Because I'm seeing a lot of this now with AI, like, well, my competitors are doing it this way, so if we don't do it, we're going to get left behind. Do you think that's also the case as well, Jordie? Like,
oh
that's where the pressure comes
yes, of
in.
course. And here's the thing. Your competitor is probably also doesn't know what they're doing. As well as the fact that even if you have a competition that would do exactly the same thing, so for instance, if it's like Ryanair versus like other cheap air providers, those, they would still have very different clients. And so something that does work for them may definitely not work for you. Like, there are some foundational things with AI that you have to learn now and that you have to get used to, probably, but also a lot of things that no, you shouldn't be doing it because your competition is doing it. And maybe even if you want to differentiate, maybe you just want to do the opposite. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I see Jules looking. Maybe she also wants to chip in there.
I was going to say, taking the I use this a lot in class, taking the kind of, the roadmap analogy. It's kind of like any good sat nav. Sometimes you've got to be prepared to reroute if circumstances change, but also sometimes there's something in the way and it tries to make you reroute in that direction, and actually you're better off sticking with where you are because everybody else is going there, and by sticking to your path you can actually get there a bit quicker. So I think that you have got to be willing to make changes, and sometimes things you do have to respond to, but equally jumping on the trend. The number of people I know who are on 7 or 8 social media platforms, I'm like, no, it's just not relevant to you. So I do think it is about, once you've got that strategy, yes, be prepared to do some of those kind of diversions, but you have to stay true to who you are as a business and a brand. And I think that's got to be the core of everything. So jumping on trends, being a bit of a magpie isn't going to work.
And I couldn't agree more in the relation to inclusive marketing as well. Like brands and companies are always surprised when I tell them to not do stuff. If your audience, or if you haven't catered in any way to women or underrepresented communities, your product doesn't serve the disabled community, don't do anything. And they're always surprised. They think I'm going to tell them, yes, change your flat. I'm like, no, that has not, it doesn't align with your strategy. It's not your audience. You're not putting in the work to engage with them. You need to have those fundamentals and those customer segmentations in your research before you start applying the tactics of inclusive marketing and changing any of those things. So if it doesn't align, don't do it. But at the same time, to what Jules says, is understanding how to adapt. Your brand might change over years. Like one of the brands that I use a lot is Ben and Jerry's. They are very much activists in their stuff now.
Love them.
Now they're activists, but like when they started, they were just selling ice cream. And they've adapted and changed their brand over time, and they've incorporated their values into what they're doing. But for a long time, those two things were very separate for them. So being able to change and adapt and being understanding what aligns with where you are as an organization is so important. And strategy and planning and taking the time to plan that strategy is so important.
Yeah, I think you can see when it's kind of shoehorned in, and it's not, it's because, well, this is important to our customers, so we need to just be talking about it. And there's not that planning or emphasis to think about it strategically. How are we going to, do this so that we're going to engage the audience, but it's going to connect to our values, to our culture, all of those aspects that you've just greatly explained. And I think you can see that quite a lot now with the use of like sustainability, and yes, we are going to be really more sustainable. Okay, but how exactly are we going to incorporate that, and really how are we going to do that? And it's a great example you just brought out there. And one other company that is also, they really ingrain it through everything that they do is Lego. They talk about sustainability, and yes, okay, when you boil it down, it's a plastic toy, and they're very conscious of that sustainability element. So what do? They test other plastics and they see, can we make this more biodegradable? Can we improve this? Can we be more sustainable? And they come out and they're honest and they say, actually, we found an alternative, but it actually caused more pollution. So we need to go back to the drawing board. And I think a lot of organizations are a bit frightened to also be honest that if you do try something and you do try to pivot and it doesn't quite work out in the way that you intended, to just be honest about it, and just come forward and be like, we tried it, it didn't work, and we've had to adapt in a different way.
Yeah, I think you just need to, at the very start, come from a position of insight. You need to do your research first. You need to look at the market conditions. You need to speak to customers, look at the products. And then as Joyann said, like you need to speak to lots of different people. Don't just speak to your team. You're just going to get one voice. And as you said, you can have unconscious biases before you know it, feeding into your strategy. So I always say, just step back, speak to as many people as possible, and then pull your strategy together. And I think that's really important. Otherwise, as you said, you could accidentally make unconscious biases, or people in your team who may have biases feed into your campaigning. And that's just, you need to sort that at the very start.
Yeah, 100%. We've just had a really great question come in as well, actually. That is really on topic of what we're talking about now, so it's worth jumping into, I think. From Sarah here, how do you pick the trends that are relevant to you when you're just starting off? How do you differentiate yourself as a company when people are overloaded with ads? Like, how do you make that stand out? Who would like to take this one and give some tips?
I have just one, because we're talking as well in the age of AI now. I think there's so much to be said about being messy again and planning the messiness, which I know sounds weird, but like there was a time I felt that we've lost a little bit where campaigns were intentionally messy and you're like, oh my gosh, did they actually do that? And you got excited about it. So I think as a small brand, you don't have to be polished anymore. That's not what people want. And I think if you could incorporate how to consistently be messy in your strategy, I think is a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah, I think you've just got to, you basically building on that. You've got to be true to your brand. You've got to be true to who you are. Like you said, if you're being squeaky clean and using lots of AI tools and you're churning out lots of content, that's fine. But if it doesn't tie back to your core principles and who you are, then I think it just doesn't come across as authentic. And I think that's so important these days. People are across so many different channels, seeing so many different messages. You just need to stay authentic to your brand. And I'd always suggest that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I was going to go on, Jordie.
Yeah, okay. I have a little tip for Sarah. Sarah, if you are looking on how to differentiate yourself, right? And like how to be different. That's basically it, right? How do I be different? And so if I'm different, I can bring something from a different angle, or I can be more valuable in some way. So what you could think about as a tool is like, what can I give up? What can I give away for free, for instance, that my competition cannot give away for free because that's where they make their money, or that's how their model is, or that's how their business is. And it doesn't need to be part of your own product. It can also be something that is adjacent to it. So for instance, say you are a bakery, yeah? Okay, what can you give away for free? There are like a bunch of things that you could give away for free, even your products. Yeah. You could also give away some service, some catering service, for instance. If that's not 100% your business model, if your business model is actually the service, you could give the product for free. But if you want to come and cook or come and make free deliveries, you're offering a very different product than at other bakery. You're just looking at, okay, which part of it can I give away for free, or what can I miss? And then all of a sudden you have a very strong or a very different proposition. So it's not just being different. It's not just, you could wear different jackets, and that's also, but that's just the outside. But changing the business model and how you get customers and what they value. They might value the free stuff more than the actual product, but you'd be selling more of it, right? That's just a little tool. Jules.
Yeah, I was going to go ahead with something that I put in the book, and I'm feeling I might be jumping ahead from Jenna's.
No. I was just about to say,
yeah,
building on what Jordie was saying, your model in the book is an extra layer to add to that. So go for it. Yeah.
So I developed a very simple marketing model. I don't like making things complicated. And the way I look at it is it's the bed model. So the B is the basic product that you're offering. Okay, the E is what is going to be expected from you. So, and that will often depend on price. So if you think about a hotel, the basic product is a bed for the night. Okay, what is expected from you? Well, that is going to depend. If you are a youth hostel, then it's kind of a bed and hopefully some sheets. But if you're a 5-star hotel, you're expecting a lot more. Okay, the D is the differentiator. Okay, so this is how you're going to stand out. This is how you get people to choose you. Okay, which is exactly what you're asking about, Sarah. And for me, that differentiator can be so many different things. Okay, so again, if we go back to the hotel, it's easy to remember with beds, and I teach a lot of hospitality students. But the differentiator could be as simple as chocolates on your pillow if you're a little boutique hotel. You know, and I remember the place I used to go in Oxford, I used to love years ago these beautiful, gorgeous chocolates that were on my pillow. And that was just something I liked. And if I was there on business, I always chose that hotel because of that. If you're a great big pool, if you're a great big hotel, then it might be the kind of pool. These days, if you've got families, they tend to basically put water parks within the hotels. But how you choose that is going to go back to what I say is the very first rule of marketing, which is who is your audience. You must put yourself in your audience's shoes. And I've come up with another little model, which is about being authentic, finding a connection, and making it emotional. So ACE. Okay, so think about how you differentiate yourself. So similar to what Jordie was saying earlier, you run a coffee shop. So your basic product might be a hot beverage. The customer probably is going to expect a clean environment, probably free Wi-Fi these days, and a certain amount of quality. Okay, hopefully. The USP that you're going to start to deliver might be around creating a work hub, or these kind of bookable pods or something like that. Something that is just going to make people want to come to you instead of to Starbucks or wherever. It might be a lot of people do video calls in coffee shops, so maybe you can book soundproof booths that are bookable. You know, so people having to work from, you know, offices and book a whole day out. So just working out if that's the kind of audience you're going for. You might be in an area where sustainability is really important to the local audience. So you might go for hyper-local sourcing. So, you know, making sure that all of your materials come from in a, I don't know, 10, 15-mile radius. So that's the way in which I think you need to think about any of your products that you're developing. And also remember that you don't have to develop every single product at the same time. These bigger companies, they don't build up from, you know, one product to 100. You know, you launch one or two products, you build up your market, you work on that differentiator, and then you can expand.
Yeah, such a great point, because I think it's so easy to forget that. You know, you look at companies like Apple and you think, wow, look at this product portfolio and it's so slick and it's so innovative. And, you know, they didn't start from that. And actually, they got a lot of resistance initially on the launch of the iPhone, you know, so exactly that, like small incremental steps make such a big difference.
Did anybody watch Dragon's Den last night? So there was two companies on Dragon's Den. They both made losses over the last few years. One was a beauty product, and I didn't have a clear marketing strategy. They just weren't really sure. It was like really lovely beauty product. The second business was a non-alcoholic drinks brand. Okay, it's a gap in the market right now. But what I thought was really interesting, and I also had this call in my mind, was the fact that they were saying, like, I've got two products right now, and then they're going to build up the number of products, but also they're going, right, we want to get into retail, then I think they want to get into bars, and they want to export. They had a clear strategy, a clear direction. But it wasn't, oh, we're going to do it all now. It was, these are the steps we're going to take. It's a journey.
Yeah, clearly had their strategy, right? You can't do it all at once. And if you did, you're kind of skimming the surface and maybe not doing as well as you could do, especially if you've got limited resources and capabilities. It's such great, you know, great points and examples there. I just wanted to, we were talking a lot there about customers and finding out more about the customers. And Jordie, you have a great method for segmentation. Maybe you'd like to share some ideas around that as well. Like, how do we understand more about our customer base? What should we look for?
Sure, yes. This is very interesting, because if you are closer to your customers and you know more about your customers, then you can serve them better, right? And the flip side of that is also you can also know what they're not really into, right? Email marketing is very much tied to CRM and the knowledge that you can gather around your customers. So while working on segmentation so often and working on how to use that data so often, I created a little model that has 4 categories, and under it a lot of different subcategories. So to help you, like, okay, yeah, maybe I want to know this and this and this and this. And if I have that crucial data, then I can segment my customer into different groups and serve each group better, or take one group out and say like, yes, I'm going to target this one. Yeah. So the main pillars. Now, if I can, we'll add a URL to where people can read about it even more than. And of course, it's also in the book. So the four pillars are geographics, that has everything to do with location, country, city, language, climate, area, how much is the population there, but also touch points, different touch points can also be online. The second category is demographics. So that's the traditional things like age, gender, income, education. What's your family composition like? What's your occupation? Like the standard stuff, right? And then it comes into the more interesting, like psychographics. How do people think? How do they live? What are their AIO, activity, interest, opinion? Do they have certain concerns, right? That they're worried about. I always say that sumo, the the thing you lie awake about on Sunday evening that will face you on Monday morning, sumo. And also the personality, values, attitudes, and these kind of things. And then the thing we love in online marketing is behavioral. Okay, what do people really do? Yeah. So are they buying stuff, or are they showing intent about it? What is the user like, status, life cycle, engagement, all that stuff? Because that's very close to acting and very measurable, and you can trigger things on it. So those four are may cover like 90% of everything that you'd love to know. And I always say then try to do the 5-question interview. So this is another tool. 5-question interview means, what do I want to know about my customer? Which 5 data points do I want to have? And contact information. Yeah. And if they bought your product, you can't have that. So next to those, which 5 points? Because if you have the most important data, then you can do a lot with that already. You don't have to gather all the data. No, I want to have those most important things, and I'm going to work on that. So is this recognizable? I saw James like nodding. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask you, Jordie,
Yeah.
where do you, what tips do you have on gathering this information? Because I see there's a
Right.
question in here as well. If you don't have direct access to the consumer, or maybe you don't really know anything about your audience, like where do you start?
Well, then you start to get direct access to your consumer, your audience. Like, if there is no way to get to the customer, okay, then you go and you call them, or you go and you get into the car and drive to someone that you know that is a customer and talk to them. Because you do need at least anecdotal information of who this is, why they are buying your stuff, and what triggered that. So in my training, I ask the people this different question. So I don't ask them, why are you here? I ask them the question, what was the first time that you thought about coming to this training? And I can ask the same like to the audience, like, what is the first time that you thought about buying a marketing strategy for a second edition book, right? Or what is the first time that you thought about coming to this webinar, right? And they will come and say like, yes, it was this moment. I saw it on LinkedIn, or maybe I know Jen, or maybe I am working on a marketing strategy and I need information. But what was then the time? Well, that was because we're going to planning in Q4 and I need it now, right? Okay, so then I have a nugget of information. Q4 is the time, marketing planning is the reason. Now I know like, and I know a little bit about that customer who's maybe in a marketing role or a junior marketing role. Now I have a bit of nuggets of information for my marketing plan. Q4 might be hot, right? So perfect launch time, Jenna. Also the act of the planning. So maybe they want to know more about planning, and then I can, focus my content around these things. So I always ask that specific question, and it turns out for an email and a marketing automation training, there are only 12 reasons and 12 events that ignite. So then I can read minds. That's what I say. Like, everybody put your hands up if you just changed your role into a new role where you're responsible for email marketing. Always a couple of hands go up. Please raise your hand if you just bought some new software, for instance, and then hands go up. Please raise your hands if you have been doing email marketing for a while and now you're supposed to do a presentation to C-level about why things are working or not. And everybody's like, how does he know this? Well, it's because I asked 200 people before you the same question, right? And so these are elements of personas. But this is the much like sort of important thing, is to get close to the customer. If you don't know them at all, get close to potential customers. And just what James says, talk to them. And they can give, if you ask the right questions, they will give you a load of information. If I were asked the wrong question would be like, okay, why are you here with this training? And I say, yeah, because I want to learn more about this and this. Yeah, but that's not information, right? Yeah. So the right questions, asking the right questions, super important.
Just
Yeah.
to
Go on.
add to that, sorry, because coming from a social media background, I had to do a lot of getting close to the customer. And then I love you can't always be there in person with them. And sometimes we estimate how much social media originally was meant to be social. And we forget, like when I first started any of my businesses, my first couple of outreaches, people's LinkedIn DMs, is their comments, is anywhere someone is talking about the problem, I am there commenting. And then I can get to the phone call. So sometimes people forget that those are also ways. So if you look at it, all your competitors who are doing what you're doing digitally and the people commenting on their stuff, you have access because it's public. So your customers are there. Just got to be a little bit brave to take that first step of engaging.
It's such a great point, because you're completely right. We forget that social media was there to have a conversation with people. And maybe we're not using it as much as we should be to actually have those conversations with our customers. Such brilliant points. I saw another question come in about, what about the fact that we're heading towards a more conversational framework where we might be asking more questions directly to like an AI? Like in chat box and Google and so on, where websites are being pushed predominantly to the background. Joanne, this is where your expertise comes in. What's your thoughts here?
I think it's going back to what everyone's already said. It's an opportunity to be even more authentic in the way that we're producing and putting out content. Because the way the algorithms work is that they get trained on a whole bunch of data. So the data that you have published about your business, about your company, if you're answering the questions in the way that people have asked them, you're feeding into that data to be then shown in those algorithms. So instead of, if your customer is saying, what does your bread taste like? Instead of changing that to, these are selections of breads, answer the question. The person asked, what does bread taste like? Here's our answer. We're going back to genuinely engaging with the customers more, because that's what the algorithms are being trained on. I would say I wouldn't worry too tough about trying to rank. I'd worry more so on your tone of voice and what type of content you're writing in order to get into these conversational AI tools.
Yeah, it's such a great point, because it's so much more conversational and to the point. We've all been on, I did this last weekend. I was looking for a recipe to make a gluten-free chocolate cake with bananas with my son. And I found a recipe page. My God, the scroll just to get to the ingredients. I just want to get to how to make this cake. I've got a 4-year-old saying, Mummy, aren't we making a cake now? And it's exactly the same, thought process there that you so brilliantly just brought up, that yes, we need to just get to the point and not fill it with all the other things we want to say because it's important to our organization, but actually completely turn that on its head and going back to, what you've just said, what Jordie's just said, what James and Jules you said as well, and have our customer in the center. And what's most important to them is just to get the answer to that query. If you can answer that query, you start building a little bit more trust, you start to build that reputation, authenticity, and then you might then develop into having a customer. But if we can't answer that question very clearly, then we're not really going to progress that relationship any further forward, regardless as whether it's through AI or Google or how they come to us. And I think it's so easy for us to kind of get a little bit hung up on, well, ChatGPT's here now and we've got Copilot, and how do we get into the results? Then just take a step back and just think, we're just trying to answer another question in a more conversational way.
I think I couldn't,
Go
so
on.
I was going to say is I absolutely couldn't agree anymore. Basically, I think data and AI are brilliant, but dialogue's really important. Go back to Jordie's point. I keep reading articles that CMOs are using a lot of predictive analytics and AI to map emotional insight into customer journeys, which is wonderful. But I also think there's a habit of sort of chasing the latest shiny thing and looking at your segmentation and changing it every year or every couple of years, when actually your segmentation strategy probably shouldn't change that much. You can tweak it and refine it, but just because a new AI tool's on the market, you really shouldn't go back and just try to reinvent it every time, which I do see. I think you can use AI tools to refine what you're doing, but I think it's really important to speak to people as well and just look at actually going back to your points. Are we answering the customers? Are we actually driving proper engagement over seeing them as ones and zeros that we can plug into an AI tool to try to skip a particular section?
Yeah, 100%. In the book, I've got the great example of where it was by a company called Illuminati, and they created a whole event using AI, and they didn't vet any of it. And you turned up and it was not what was advertised. Nothing was coordinated. Basically it had no human touch to it whatsoever, but no one had checked what the output was, and no one had checked whether or not it was really going to satisfy the end customer. So the tools are brilliant and they're great to use, but we still need to have that strategic angle to them. Otherwise, it's giving you that generic output, which, a lot of marketers are very concerned about losing and having more generic content as one of those kind of key outputs. And it really ties back to what we've been talking about the mission and the vision, and tying everything back to the uniqueness of the organization. Joanne, I saw you
Yeah.
on mute there.
One's not fun, but one fun fact is 70% of people don't check their outputs before they publish it, which is terrible. The other bit of, if an organization is relying on AI, essentially they're nuking the personality, because 80% of that data comes from American internet, and a lot of that is from a certain generation, certain population. It is all trained on historic stuff. And if you are actually trying to make your company go forward and have sustainability and be here long term, you cannot rely on the outputs of that. And it's only as good. It can highlight certain things to you. It can highlight maybe, going back to the bread, maybe we've been selling bread and we haven't thought about selling gluten-free bread. It can highlight a bias in your data set, and that might be an opportunity to explore, but you still need to have that conversation with, could we even do this? Would our customers even want to explore gluten-free bread, or do we just stay making the bread that we love, that everyone enjoys, and improve the quality and the process of that? So it's there as a way of refining what you're already doing, but I think if you're using it as a future tool, you're setting yourself up to stumble because of all these biases in the platforms.
Yeah, it's such a good point. Gartner also did some research, and they were saying that 30% of AI-led projects are actually going to fail by the end of this year because of poor data, lack of strategy, no risk controls, where it's just been given free rein. And, that's the risk, isn't it? When we implement something and we don't really know why we're using it in the first place. There's a big
Yeah.
danger point there.
Well, so here's what happens when something is very new and a little bit hyped, or very new and very hyped. People need to experiment with it. So they go and they do a bunch of experiments, a bunch of different maybe projects around AI, which is good, but not everybody is Mark Zuckerberg. He said in an he said in an interview like, yeah, we may lose a couple of $100 billion, but we still have to do it. No, most businesses cannot lose a couple of $100 billion in experiment. So pick your wars, right? And sometimes it's waiting for someone else to cross the bridge first. They get shot, and then you look what's happening, and you don't always have to be first with every sort of trend or thing, but be sure to gather skills or gather people that have skills and employ them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. Joolz, were you just about
Oh
to
yeah,
check?
no, I was just going to say, I kind of going on to what everybody said. To me, marketing is about connection, right? People still buy people. We don't buy computers, we buy people. And so the best marketing is about understanding human needs, the emotions, even the cultural nuances, as you're talking about, Joyann. And AI is really good at analysing what people do, so it can give that data, but it can only analyse what it's given. But I don't think it can understand why they do it. So talking again earlier about what you were saying, Jordie. So I think it's probably the most powerful tactical tool that's ever been invented in a lot of ways. But it is our humanity and our ability to create a strategy that will give it direction. And until, and I don't know if it will ever happen that it's ever going to kind of overcome these kind of bias and transparency. It's this little child that we're trying to train, and right now the right people aren't training it, in my opinion. But unless we are going to use it in the right way and actually censor what's coming out, all we're going to do is mess up our own businesses, and that's really kind of quite sad, and it's almost laziness.
It's a quick fix, I think, is how it's typically seen.
Yeah.
And that's the danger with that. And I kind of know the answer to this question already from each of you just based on what we've just said, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because it's one of the questions I keep getting asked now weekly. Do we still need a strategy now we have AI?
Yes. This is short and long of it. On the AI bit, I saw someone mention, I think going what Jules said, it's there for the tactics. We still need to be in the driving force. The analogy I use in my work is that these AI tools can be really great guide dogs. And similar to a guide dog, it can keep you safe when you're crossing the street, but it still needs to be trained on all of that context, all of that information, and understand you and your audience personally in order to really provide benefits. So we still need strategy. We still need that thinking. We still need that critical thought. We still need that research. Someone mentioned in the chat what tools are out there. I highly recommend a tool called Notebook LM for your research. It is a nice contained way of using an AI tool where you can put maybe your customer research or maybe all of your competitor research and engage with it. And that is the ways that I think you should be using AI. It's not there to write your whole strategy or do any, I don't think it's good at that. But in these small areas of developing your strategy, especially if you're an individual doing it, that's where AI has its benefit, in the smaller little areas and helping you along.
And some people, like, we are strategists, we're like, yes, you need a strategy. Like, here we used to have a commercial that says like, people from WC Duck recommend WC Duck. So if maybe you are from in a different mindset, like listening to this and like, yes, but I am seeing like all these other people and they're using AI to create a bunch of content very fast, or this, or they're doing that and that. And you have a little bit of fear of missing out, right? Yes, so you can develop the skills and kind of do bits and pieces and tastes of different types of AI because it's already an umbrella of different tools that we have. One thing I would like to add is that if we're creating content, for instance, most people will not recognize the road that leads to the output of the content. So most of the customers will not see what you've done before before you're there. So there is a whole bunch of value to handcraft everything, right? If that is something that you show. If it's something that you don't show and don't tell and are not branding on, then that additional value of handcrafting stuff gets unnoticed. So maybe if you're writing an interesting article, why not have AI assist you in making an outline or assist you in giving you some suggestions or ideas or brainstorming? Because doing it the hard way will take a lot more time, right? And by assisting, getting ideas, etc., you can go faster. And speed is super important as well in resource optimization and prioritization.
Yeah, I think it's just remembering that it's an enabler. It's not strategy. You need human oversight, you need ethical frameworks, you need guidance. You need to check everything. As basically Joanne said earlier, it's like a small toddler running a library, you know, it's got access to all the information in the world, but you still have to check your small children's what they're doing. I have to check my kids all the time. And so basically but as you said, but if we take it back to what the core is, it's harder and harder to grab people's attention anyway. So if you're using AI to generate content and the same thing over and over again really quickly, you're just kind of just adding it into the same pool of content that everybody else has seen already. Whilst it's a great way to basically like, create a sandbox, throw all your data in it, basically review it really quickly and come up with different angles or check your own work. But yeah, you've just got to make sure you have those guidance in place. And the other thing to remember is that it's not free. I mean, all these free tools you get, you know, your data probably won't be secure within those particular free tools. You have to pay for corporate licenses or licenses to make sure that your data and IP stay with you. You have to train up people to use AI tools correctly. You have to build it into strategies. You have to employ stuff. You have to test stuff, like Jordie says. I think that one of the biggest sort of hype thing we've seen is that it's a free tool. You can use it, throw your stuff into it, and what you get out is brilliantly. You've got to take all these things into consideration when basically using it within your marketing campaign. That's the only thing I'd say. And I think I totally agree with what Jordie, Joanne, and Joyce said.
Yeah, I think great points. And talking about the toddler running the library has really got some traction there in the chat. Such a great analogy. And made me sweat a little thinking about my son running a library. It's a really great way of expressing that. So we talked a lot there about AI, and we've got about 6 minutes left. But one area that I think would be really great for us just to have a brief discussion on is, how do we use AI with exclusivity? And Joyann, I know that's, a big focus for your organization, but also a big focus and a passion for yourself. Now, a lot of us are using AI. We've talked there about how to use it more strategically, but how do you make sure you use it with exclusivity in mind?
I think it's important to understand and just accept that it's always going to be bias. Jules mentioned, is there a day that's ever going to be? No, it'll never be a day. And the way the governments are set up, they're never going to want to make it this super amazing tool because it's always going to work to the government's benefit. Pick your government. So putting that aside, the way that we then approach is with that awareness, we start to think about how do we prompt it? How do we engage with it? And what data does it have access to? I think every marketer should start with the AI tool that already has access to the data or the platforms they're already using. So if you're a huge Canva user, Canva has all your information. If you're using Notion, it has stay where you are at, because you already know that that tool is biased to your data set. And then when you prompt it for copy, you prompt it for an output, you're getting something that you can then filter whether it's inclusive or not. You can then filter, okay, is this output misrepresenting my community, misrepresenting the country, misrepresenting anything? And we still need other humans as well, because you're going to get used to checking things and saying, okay, it loves everyone that loves bread, but have you ran it past someone who hates bread? Has they checked the tone of it? And engaging in that circle of communication of like, is this output causing a negative impact to someone in my audience potentially? I don't know. Let me run it past someone. Let me engage with other marketeers. Conversation, checking, and just knowing overall that the platforms are biased is the kind of my standard rule of thumb. But I do think there's an opportunity there for people to keep generating. Because initially, when I started with inclusive marketing, organizations didn't want to make changes because they thought the change would cost. And now we can make changes quicker and explore changes quicker without thinking, oh, I've had a client once say they're not going to put a Black person in a jewelry ad because Black people don't buy jewelry. And they said this to my face. And I'm like, why did you hire me? Why did you want me to consult on this project? So little things like that. Again, that's a huge organization example, but at least now I can be like, mock it up, do a mock up, put it out there, do an A/B test. I don't have to debate why they should do it, and then they can collect the data. Because the other thing is they didn't even have the data on what their sales would be based on race. So this is where it can be there to empower inclusivity, but in terms of using the tools yourselves as marketeers, just assume it's always biased and just work from that aspect, and then you can start to get more creative assets out of it.
Amazing, yeah. And go on, Jordie. I saw you on mute there.
Yeah, so one example, I don't know where I'm getting this from, but biases are a muck, but also a muck on like not just in AI, but in people as well. Because we have a certain idea of what people in a certain role are like. For instance, when you visualize a CEO, you think, oh, they must want facts and they must be super busy and they must be in an office. All those things may not be true. They may not be super busy or want facts. They may want a story and may want something to distract them instead of like the executive summary. No, maybe they want something very or be engaged by something else. When they may say they want the one thing, but they actually act on the other thing. So if we look into a role, for instance, or a function in a company or a type of customer, there are so many assumptions that are projected on it. And even the people themselves will give their own biases back. They will say the one thing because they expect that you want to hear that. So very good is what you're saying, like test it in real life. Test things and see what happens, right? And sometimes it's totally contra the expectation or contra-intuitive what works and what doesn't work. So yes, I love the facts about biases.
Yeah, definitely something we should all be considering anyway. I think there's still probably a lot of people don't necessarily realize how strongly embedded those biases are when they're using these tools. But as we're coming towards the end, it would be great to jump into a couple of questions that we have in the chat box. So we've got one here. Any tools that the speakers love for measuring the success or failure of a marketing strategy? Any that anyone would like to share? I think maybe the word love put us all off a little bit.
It was the
Yeah.
overall bit for me. It's like I can't think of one tool. It's
I
many.
think it's got to depend on so marketing strategy is so big and it changes direction, and it's just very dependent. There's tools that I would say I use in particular areas, so for tactical, and then something like Notebook LM that can bring everything together, that can look at like lots of different areas. But I think every organization is different. So you've got to go, but the ultimate tool really is how many sales are you making?
Yeah.
That's your ultimate tool, is how, the sales you're making and the revenue you're making. And then understanding the channels and that side of things, because that's really what is going to matter.
I totally agree, Joolz. I say the ultimate tool is your bank account,
Yeah.
right? And if you have growth there, you're doing something right. The secondary measure is like how many bricks are you getting through the window Like if you're getting a lot of bricks, people angry at you, either you're doing something very good or very wrong. Like doesn't matter. Like if you plus love letters. If you're getting a lot of love letters, like if a certain part of niche or something is really like actively promoting you, you are having some kind of magic there. Uh, so those are some unconventional and very unuseful tools, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I think like you know, if you're looking for a starting point to understand whether or not it's even performing well, or if you're even going in the right direction, because maybe you're got at a stage where you're like at a check-in point, you know, is this strategy actually delivering anything, or are we going in the direction we wanted to go in? You know, there are some elements of the AI tools that can give you that summary very effectively, just those top line. These are the things that are working really well. This is where there's some high risk, and these are some things you might want to think about stopping. And it will give you that overall summary, you know, but it goes back to all of what we've been talking about throughout this hour is providing the context, aligning it to your objectives. Has it reached the target audience? You know, having those 5 key questions that Jordie mentioned. You know, what are we wanting to measure? Because we could measure everything. You know, there's hundreds of metrics. I've got a whole chapter in the book of metrics. You know, there's a lot of them. So we really want to focus on those 5 key areas that are most important to our business, to our customer, and then using that to guide on what we're going to be measuring and the angles that we need to be looking at it for, because there are hundreds of tools and we want to think about what exactly are our questions to really pull all that together. And we're coming to a close. We're slightly running it over, so I appreciate everybody's time. You know, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to our amazing 4 speakers. Such great tips, nuggets, experience, you know, questions, just awesome. Thank you so much for being here and contributing to the book. So everything we've talked about here are all topics covered in the book. You know, as I shared in the chat box, if you do start reading the book, which I really hope you do, you've got that 30% discount on the screen. Please add a review. It really helps, just so that someone else can see the book and think, oh, actually, that would be useful to me. I'm maybe struggling for all of the topics that we've talked about here. Before we finish and we round up, I would love for us just to have a little cup of tea or a coffee or a water cheers to celebrate the 2nd edition and just to thank everyone for being here today. So thank you all so much to Marketing Strategy. Long live Marketing Strategy, even in the age of AI. So thank you all so much. This is all recorded, so you're about to come back to the recording as well. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope you enjoy the new book.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.